Hi Ginger and others. Welcome to, I guess this really is the first segment of my project here. And as stated in my intro video, what we're gonna do today, don't mind the flickering. We had a power outage weeks ago and PG didn't fix it properly. So we're not haunted, it's just a thing. So I hope it doesn't bother anybody who's actually watching the visual footage. I digress. But today we are going to be going through In a Tub by Amy Hempel, and I'm in my bathtub. I just thought it was appropriate, and I'm gonna be giving an intro basically to Amy Hempel. And this is her collection, Reasons to Live. This is actually her first story collection. She published it in 1985. And In a Tub is the first story in her first collection. It's not the first story she wrote. That one is titled In the Cemetery Where Al Jolson is Buried. That was the first one that she wrote. But the first story that appears in her first collection is In a Tub, and it's one that is always going to be near and dear to my heart, very important to me. So I thought, what better place to get this underway and talk about one of my most favorite authors in the whole world to date than in the bathtub with some candle slip. So yeah, let's get started. I'll give you guys acting like I have an audience. I'll give Ginger and whoever else may be watching a little bit of info on Amy Hempel. So she's an American short story writer. Her solar astro sign is Sagittarius, just like mine. She's a creative writing professor. Her first collection, as stated, Reasons to Live, published in 1985. And she's a super cool lady. And that is pretty much all the info that I'm gonna go over for like her personal life, because I don't know if I've stated this before, but she's relatively private. She doesn't have a whole lot of social media, and with the social media she has, I mean her one Facebook page that isn't even verified. There's nothing personal on it. It's just responses to reviews of her work. And she's done interviews before. But mostly it's just talking about her creative process and about how she raises guide dogs for the blind. So just from the very little amount that we can know about her personal life that she will give, she seems like a really cool lady. I think she'd be an awesome person to hang out with. But yeah, we don't really know anything about her family. We can make healthy and educated assumptions through some things that we read in her fiction, but she won't say it directly. So I thought, this is her most recent collection, Sing to It, and we're not going to get into this today, but I do want to read some of the comments, like praise that she's received from different magazines, different outlets, journals, whatever, to kind of give you guys a little bit more 411 on what other people are saying about her writing. Because I can talk and say that she's the best and she's great and she had such a positive effect on my life, but I'm really nobody. So this might require some further convincing from people that actually have credentials. So this is a comment from the Wall Street Journal. Ms. Hempel's stories compel us to rereading in much the same way we review or reread interactions in everyday life, attempting to piece together what really happened, what was actually being said. When there is a shock, a crisis, a scene of horror, Ms. Hempel sings to it, and the result is an exquisite collection by a master of the genre. And that comment about sing to it is something that I will get into a little bit later, probably not in this video, because I have, as you can see, I've marked up different pages and I have all sorts of annotations ready to go for sing to it, but that's going to be a separate video. So that will be discussed at a later time. Here's another comment by Kirkus Reviews. Apparently it is a starred review that is in parentheses. I don't know what that means, but it's in front of me, so there's that. A dizzying array of short fiction. Hempel packs a lot into her narrow spaces. Nuance, longing, love, and loss. The brilliance of the writing resides in the way Hempel manages to tell us everything, in spite of her narrator's reticence? I'm actually not sure how you pronounce that name. Teaching us to read between the lines. And yeah, that's Kirkus Reviews, starred review. I believe, just taking that from context clues, that just means the sparse nature of her sentences. Because her narrators, they are very reserved, and as a reader, you're required to do some reading in between the lines most of the time when you're reading, but Hempel definitely makes you work for it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and assign meaning to that word because I'm assuming that I kind of got the gist, even if I may have pronounced it wrong. Writing major? Anyway. So those were my favorite reviews, and I bookmarked them on purpose because I felt like they really kind of bolstered my view of Hempel's work and what attracts me so much to what she writes. So I thought that I would share them here. So now, without further ado, I want to read In a Tub in My Bathtub. Let's get it started. My heart, I thought it stopped. So I got in my car and headed for God. I passed 2 churches with cars parked in front. Then I stopped at the third because no one else had. It was early afternoon, the middle of the week. I chose a pew in the center of the rows. Episcopal or Methodist, it didn't make any difference. It was as quiet as a church. I thought about the feeling of the long mist beat and the tumble of the next ones as they rushed to fill the space. I sat there, in the high brace of quiet and stained glass, and I listened. At the back of my house, I can stand in the light from the sliding glass door and look out onto the deck. The deck is planted with marguerites and succulents in red clay pots. One of the pots is empty. It is shallow and broad and filled with water like a bird bath. My cat takes naps in the window box. Her gray chin is powdered with the iridescent dust from butterfly wings. If I tap on the glass, the cat will not look up. The sound that I make is not food. When I was a girl, I sneaked out at night. I pressed myself to hedges and fitted the shadows of trees. I went to a construction site near the lake. I took a concrete mixing tub, slid it to the shore, and sat down inside it like a saucer. I would push off from the sand with one stolen oar and float, hearing nothing, for hours. The bird bath is shaped like that tub. I look at my nails in the harsh bathroom light. The scare will appear as a ripple at the base. It will take a couple of weeks to see. I lock the door and run a tub of water. Most of the time you don't really hear it. A pulse is a thing that you feel, even if you are somewhat quiet. Sometimes you hear it through the pillow at night, but I know that there is a place where you can hear it even better than that. Here is what you do. You ease yourself into a tub of water. You ease yourself down. You lie back and wait for the ripples to smooth away. And you take a deep breath and slide your head under and listen for the playfulness of your heart. That was In a Tub by Amy Hempel. And here are the questions that I have if you choose to interact with them. And even if you don't really want to, maybe listen to them anyway if you feel like it, because some of them are kind of interesting, might just kind of like get you thinking. But once again, no expectations, user-friendly. totally do whatever feels right to you. So my first question is, how did this story make you feel? What are your thoughts on the organization or lack thereof? Did you like the story? What do you think of the narrator? And finally, can you draw any connections from this story to your own personal experiences? Why or why not? And those are all that I have for this story. In the different stories that I read, there are probably going to be some repeats, because I think that it's a very important question after stories that you read to ask, how did it make you feel and what did you think of it? You know, was it meaningful to you? Did you like it? You know, I think that, those are all questions that should be asked, because, you know, not only does that get you critically thinking about a piece of literature and able to kind of dissect it and, you know, pick meaning apart from something that is like very short and sparse and kind of dense, like a lot of things that Hempel writes, you know? And it can also just be kind of like a fun exercise. So you can learn what kind of literature you enjoy versus what kind of literature you don't enjoy. So you can use that information to make informed choices later when you're thinking about what kind of books you want to consume. So there's that. I will go ahead and kind of discuss some other things with this story. So how did the story make you feel? Well, I've reread it, God. I'm not even gonna give it a number. I've reread it myriad times. And every time it makes me feel relaxed, and it makes me feel like comfortable. It feels like I'm entering like a private space into her mind, because she classifies Reasons to Live and all of her works as fiction, right? Cool. Nothing CNF or creative nonfiction. But In a Tub reads to me as a stream of consciousness journal entry. And so it feels like I'm entering a very private space in her mind, and it feels extremely intimate and soothing, because there are plenty of things that I can relate to, even in such a short story. You know, like the review said, she just packs so much into such a tiny package. So how does it make me feel? Makes me feel great, safe, welcome, comfortable, etc. What are my thoughts on the organization or lack thereof? Well, I kind of picked that into my prior answer. I interjected that. It reads like a stream of consciousness, like a journal entry, and I love that. I think that it's really interesting how some of her stories totally stray away from what we would consider, you know, the way a book should be written, because they're not executed in an entirely linear fashion. In fact, oftentimes quite the antithesis of that. And I love it. I think that, you know, she's such a pro, she can break whatever rules she wants, and she knows when to break them. And I love it. I really do. Did I like this story? Oh, of course I did. What do I think of the narrator? I think the narrator is Hempel herself recounting experiences. And I think that's super cool. And I think specifically this part that I'll go back over, when she says, "When I was a girl, I sneaked out at night. I pressed myself to hedges and fitted the shadows of trees. I went to a construction site near the lake. I took a concrete mixing tub, slid it to the shore, and sat down inside it like a saucer. I would push off from the sand with one stolen oar and float, hearing nothing for hours." The bird bath is shaped like that tub. I think that that is her simply recounting a memory from when she was a young woman, a young girl living with her parents, because, you know, she says, "When I was a girl, I sneaked out." So she says she was already a girl, meaning that she was a child, much younger than she is at the time she was writing this. And sneaking out at night, that, you know, I'm working under the assumption that she was living with her parents, because if you're young and you're sneaking out, you obviously live with some sort of guardian or some sort of person that you have a power dynamic with, right? Working under the assumption that if she was young and she lived by herself, there would be no need to sneak out because there's no one to answer to except for yourself, to give yourself permission to leave at a weird hour, right? So I think this is a memory from her girlhood that she interjected here. And it's interesting because I can kind of relate with this memory because that she has, even though of course I never knew her, and she's much older than me, so I wouldn't have known her. We never would have crossed paths, you know, for many different reasons. But I think it's interesting that she is sneaking out at night and she's not, you know, like going to a party or like meeting a friend or like meeting a boy or a girl or anything like that. She's just going to push off from the sand with one stolen oar and float, hearing nothing for hours. And I think that that's very interesting. And I like it because that's definitely the kind of weird shit that I used to do when I was living with my parents. Just leave the house to go like run around a cemetery and just like float around downtown in the dark like an idiot, you know? And so I really like that. And you know, that bleeds directly into my next question, which is, can you draw any connections from this story to your own experiences? Why or why not? I clearly can. But what I am more interested in is hearing if anybody else can or if anybody else can't, you know? And I'll write these questions in the description. So if there's somebody who's just watching this video and they want the questions in like a written form, because I know that sometimes that's like an easier way for people to remember stuff if it's written in conjunction with like verbal direction. So I'll do that in case that's helpful to anybody. And I would love to hear what people have to say, if this is nice, people's thoughts. Did you feel like I got anything wrong? Do you disagree? Do you agree? Piggyback? Kind of agree? All that kind of jazz. I would absolutely love to hear that. And maybe I'll go ahead and read another story. I will do The Man in Bogota. This is another one of my favorites from Amy Hempel. It's even shorter than In a Tub, so get ready. I'm looking to see, yeah, The Man in Bogota is in Reasons to Live. And I pulled out my, this is a collection of her stories, and it features Reasons to Live, The Dog of the Marriage, The Gates of the Animal Kingdom, and Tumble Home. And I'm just using this book instead of my other copy of Reasons to Live because I already have this one bookmarked. And that is the only reason. And of course, this is only something that is going to make sense if you're actually watching this video as opposed to just listening to it. But just take my word for it. I have 2 copies. So, The Man in Bogota. This is actually, this is ridiculous, but it's actually the screensaver on my phone because this is just such a hard-hitting story that it's big enough to just fit in your pocket. Like, it's quite small, quite short. So let's get into it. The Man in Bogota. And you know, you can consider, if you want to, consider the questions that I already asked about In a Tub, and maybe see how does this one make you feel. Can you do any text to life connections, text to world connections, any sort of connections? Do you like it? Do you like her style? All that kind of jazz. Maybe just kind of think about it a little bit if you want to. Okay, The Man in Bogota. The police and emergency service people fail to make a dent. The voice of the pleading spouse does not have the hoped-for effect. The woman remains on the ledge, though not, she threatens, for long. I imagine that I am the one who must talk the woman down. I see it, and it happens like this. I tell the woman about a man in Bogota. He was a wealthy man, an industrialist who was kidnapped and held for ransom. It was not a TV drama. His wife could not call the bank and in 24 hours have $1 million. It took months. The man had a heart condition, and the kidnappers had to keep the man alive. Listen to this, I tell the woman on the ledge. His captors made him quit smoking. They changed his diet and made him exercise every day. They held him that way for 3 months. When the ransom was paid and the man was released, his doctor looked him over. He found the man to be in excellent health. I tell the woman what the doctor said then, that the kidnap was the best thing to happen to that man. Maybe this is not a come down from the ledge story, but I tell it with the thought that the woman on the ledge will ask herself a question, the question that occurred to that man in Bogota. He wondered how we know that what happens to us isn't good. And that is the man in Bogota. So I think that is where I will leave it for today. I have several other stories in Reasons to Live that I want to do. And, then there are also, let's see, there's The Case of the Animal Kingdom, Tumble Home, The Dog of the Marriage, and Sing to It. So yeah, so I have 4 other collections, not including Reasons to Live, that I have plucked stories from. And I have questions that I've written for. So the Hempel series will be continuing. And I hope that whomever wants to tells me what they think about this, what they think about her, all the thoughts. I love getting people's perspectives and points of view. Let me know what you thought. And thank you so much for listening. This project is kind of like my baby now. Totally thought of it randomly, and it's very exciting to have something to be this excited about in such a fucking weird time in the world that's just killing everybody collectively. So that's my wrap-up spiel. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate everybody's engagement and my friends' support. I will see you in the next read aloud. All right, bye-bye.